On the day before Thanksgiving in 1971, a man in a business suit bought a one-way ticket on Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 from Portland to Seattle. He paid cash, $20. He gave his name as Dan Cooper. Less than 3 hours later, he would parachute out of that airplane with $200,000 in ransom money, vanishing into the stormy night sky over the forests of Washington state. He was never seen again. This is the story of D.B. Cooper, the only unsolved case of air piracy in American history. November 24th, 1971, Thanksgiving Eve. Portland International Airport was busy with holiday travelers. Among them was a man in his mid-40s wearing a black business suit, a black tie, and a white shirt. He carried a briefcase. He wore dark sunglasses. In every way, he looked like a typical businessman of the era. At the check-in counter, he bought a ticket under the name Dan Cooper. The flight was Northwest Orient Flight 305, a Boeing 727 headed to Seattle. Flying time, about 30 minutes. Or so everyone thought. The plane took off at 2:50 p.m. with 36 passengers aboard. Shortly after takeoff, the man who called himself Dan Cooper handed a note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. She assumed it was a phone number, something she got from male passengers occasionally. She put it in her pocket without reading it. "Miss, you'd better look at that note," Cooper said calmly. "I have a bomb." Florence Schaffner read the note. It said he had a bomb in his briefcase and wanted her to sit with him. She did. Cooper opened his briefcase just enough for her to see red cylinders, wires, and a battery. It looked like a bomb, whether it was real or not. His demands were specific: $200,000 in $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to refuel the aircraft. The plane was now a hostage situation at 10,000 feet. Florence Schaffner relayed the message to the cockpit. Captain William Scott informed Seattle Air Traffic Control. The FBI was notified. Northwest Orient Airlines President Donald Nyrop made the decision quickly. Give him what he wants. Passenger safety was the priority. For the next 2 hours, Flight 305 circled above the Puget Sound area, while authorities on the ground scrambled to meet Cooper's demands. The passengers were told there was a minor mechanical issue causing the delay. Most had no idea they were in the middle of a hijacking. The $200,000 was gathered from multiple Seattle banks. It weighed about 21 pounds. The FBI photographed every serial number, creating a record they hoped would eventually lead them to the hijacker. They also provided 4 parachutes as requested, 2 primary chutes and 2 reserves, obtained from a local skydiving school. At 5:39 p.m., nearly 3 hours after the hijacking began, Flight 305 landed at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Cooper allowed all 36 passengers and 2 of the 3 flight attendants to leave in exchange for the money and parachutes. Only the flight crew and 1 flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, remained with Cooper. Cooper's next demand: fly to Mexico City. But he had specific requirements. The aircraft should fly no higher than 10,000 feet, with the rear air stair deployed, at minimum speed with flaps lowered. The crew told him this configuration would require a refueling stop in Reno, Nevada. Cooper agreed. At 7:40 p.m., Flight 305 took off again, heading south toward Reno with just 6 people aboard. 3 pilots, 1 flight attendant, 1 hijacker, and $200,000 in cash. The weather that night was terrible. A cold, steady rain fell across the Pacific Northwest. Visibility was poor. The clouds hung low and thick. Temperatures were near freezing at 10,000 feet. These were not conditions any experienced skydiver would choose to jump in. Around 8 p.m., somewhere over the Cascade Mountains of southern Washington, A warning light illuminated in the cockpit. The rear air stair had been activated. The flight crew felt a change in air pressure. The plane's tail dipped slightly, then recovered. Cooper had jumped. He had leapt into a moonless night, in a business suit, in freezing rain, over rugged, heavily forested terrain. He carried 21 pounds of cash strapped to his body with a reserve parachute. And then, nothing. He vanished into the darkness. When Flight 305 landed in Reno at 10:15 p.m., Cooper was gone. All that remained were his clip-on tie, a mother-of-pearl tie clip, and 8 cigarette butts he'd left in the ashtray. He'd been remarkably calm throughout the entire ordeal. Chain-smoking, but calm. The next morning, one of the most extensive manhunts in FBI history began. The FBI calculated that Cooper had jumped somewhere over the Lewis River area north of Portland. They searched hundreds of square miles of dense forest. They found nothing. No body, no parachute, no money. The investigation, codenamed NORJAC, Northwest Hijacking, would go on for 45 years. The FBI interviewed thousands of people. They investigated hundreds of suspects. The composite sketch, based on descriptions from the crew, was distributed nationwide. But here's the thing. In 1971, airport security was almost non-existent. Cooper hadn't even given his real name. The crew's descriptions were vague. Mid-40s, around 5 feet 10 inches, brown eyes, dark complexion. He could have been anyone. The case captured America's imagination. Who was D.B. Cooper? The name D.B. actually came from a media mistake. A reporter confused him with another suspect named D.B. Cooper, and the name stuck. Some saw him as a folk hero, a regular guy who outsmarted the system and got away with it. Others pointed out he'd endangered the lives of 42 people and threatened to blow up an aeroplane. For 9 years there was nothing. No trace. No leads that went anywhere. Then, in February 1980, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was on a family camping trip along the Columbia River, about 30 miles from the suspected jump zone. He was digging in the sandy beach when he found something unusual. Bundles of rotting $20 bills. $5,800 in total. The serial numbers matched. This was Cooper's ransom money. But the discovery raised more questions than it answered. How did the money get there? The Columbia River was miles from the suspected jump zone. Had Cooper survived and buried it? Had the money washed downstream somehow? Was Cooper's body somewhere nearby? Despite extensive searching of the area, nothing else was ever found. Over the decades, the FBI investigated over 800 suspects. Some were promising. There was Richard Floyd McCoy, who committed a similar hijacking just months later using almost the same method. But he didn't quite match the physical description. There was Kenneth Christensen, a Northwest Orient purser who fit the description and allegedly started spending money he shouldn't have had shortly after the hijacking. There was Robert Rackstraw, a former Army paratrooper and pilot who had the skills to survive such a jump. But none could be definitively proven to be D.B. Cooper. In July 2016, the FBI officially closed the case. After 45 years, thousands of hours of investigation, and millions of dollars spent, they admitted defeat. D.B. Cooper had won. So what really happened to D.B. Cooper? There are really only two possibilities. Theory 1. He died. Many experts, including the FBI, believe Cooper didn't survive the jump. Consider the conditions. Jumping at night, in the rain, in a business suit and loafers. Not exactly ideal skydiving gear. He was wearing a loafer that flew off as he jumped. It was found on the plane. He jumped with a reserve parachute that was actually a non-functional training chute that had been sewn shut. If his main chute failed, he was doomed. The terrain below was unforgiving. Dense forest, ravines, the icy Columbia River. Even if he survived the landing, hypothermia would have been a real threat. Maybe he's still out there. Somewhere in those forests, his remains never found, slowly becoming part of the wilderness. Theory 2. He survived. But others believe he made it. After all, Cooper knew what he was doing. His demands were specific and knowledgeable. He chose a Boeing 727 because it was the only commercial airliner at the time with a rear air stair that could be opened in flight. He knew to demand multiple parachutes. The FBI couldn't risk giving him a sabotaged chute if they thought he might force a crew member to jump with him. He specified the altitude, speed, and flap configuration of the aircraft, details a layman wouldn't know. Maybe he landed safely, buried most of the money, planning to retrieve it later, but never got the chance. Maybe he lived out the rest of his life in quiet anonymity, never spending the marked bills, taking his secret to the grave. We'll probably never know. More than 50 years later, D.B. Cooper remains a mystery. His story has inspired books, movies, and countless theories. He's become a legend. The man who beat the system, who jumped into the unknown, and was never seen again. Was he a criminal mastermind? A desperate man who got lucky? A skilled operative who knew exactly what he was doing? Or was he just someone who made a bold, reckless decision and paid for it with his life somewhere in the forests of Washington state? The truth is, we don't know. And that's what makes the story of D.B. Cooper so captivating. In an age where we can track almost anyone, almost anywhere, he remains invisible. The only unsolved case of air piracy in American history. And perhaps that's exactly how D.B. Cooper wanted it.